Well, welcome everybody. It's with great pleasure that I open this webinar to introduce the launch of Land Cover Map 2007. I'm Professor Mark Bailey. I'm the Director of the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. The Centre of Ecology and Hydrology is the UK Centre of Excellence for integrated research into terrestrial and freshwater ecosystems and their interaction with the atmosphere. CEH is supported by the Natural Environment Research Council and is located at 4 sites across England, Scotland and Wales. Land Cover Map 2007 is the third in the series, the first being produced in 1990, the second being produced in 2000. The 2007 product, however, is quite a technical innovation and development from the previous ones, which will allow us a much greater depth for analysis of the information provided. And what it will hopefully do is provide the evidence tools that we need to understand better the environment and the ecosystem services which are provided, and particularly in how land use change influences biodiversity and the structure of the UK habitats. Well, as you will hear in a few moments, the Land Cover Map is developed from a whole range of data and information from remote sensing, satellite imagery and digital cartography, and describes through over 10 million land parcels some 23 habitat types, basically giving you a map of the UK field by field. It's a unique product in itself, and we believe it's going to be critical in providing the required evidence for studying ecosystem services. And really, the purpose of the webinar is to demonstrate the value of the product, but also to hope for you to realise how important this could be in your own research and work, and your opportunity to, I think, take advantage of working with this product. So I look forward to your questions at the end of the day. I'd like to welcome Peter Costigan, who is the chair of the Countryside Survey Steering Group, Countryside Survey being a large undertaking that was completed last year and culminated in the production of the Countryside Survey Integrated Assessment Report. Peter, I welcome you.
Hello. I'm delighted to be giving this policy perspective on why we need a land cover map. I've been involved in Countryside Survey and the land cover map since about 1990, so I'm familiar with the various versions of the LCM that have been produced and about their use in practice. The 2007 version of the land cover map is the third in a series. Back in 1990, the first land cover map was based on the definition of 25-metre pixels and produced a raster image. In 1998, the second LCM moved on to be a vector image, where the boundaries of the vector polygons were defined from the image itself. And now in the third version, derived from 2007 data, we have a vector image where the boundaries are derived from existing cartographic information, such as Ordnance Survey. We can see the difference between a 1998 vector image on the left and a 2007 image on the right, where we can see all the field boundaries, even when neighbouring fields are classified as the same land cover. In looking at the policy uses for LCM, it's helpful to return to a scoping study that was produced back in 2004 in preparation for the 2007 Countryside Survey and Land Cover Map. This was conducted for us by ADAS and involved speaking to many users and potential users. And the report of this scoping study is available from the DEFRA website. The study identified a wide range of areas in which the LCM is useful or potentially useful, some of which I've listed here. This covers a wide range of issues, from complying with habitats and birds directives to tracking agricultural land use, mapping forestry areas, exploring risks from climate change and invasive species. There can be also uses at the local and regional level, such as in planning, and at the regional, country and UK level. Effectively, the land cover map can be useful to any policy where it's helpful to look at land cover in the context of the rest of the landscape. The 2004 report identified a number of potential improvements which users would like to have seen or like to see in the new land cover map. They included improved accuracy, both at national, local and regional scales, better integration with Ordnance Survey mapping, better integration with the countryside survey field data, the ability to detect change over time, improved resolution of agricultural land use, an approach that would allow some sort of flexible habitat classification so that the same image could be reclassified depending upon how users actually wanted to define habitats, so that could be used in a comparative way. Better integration with other data sets, better linkage with the Careen database, which is produced by the European Environment Agency, and a key issue, easy licensing and distribution. I have to say that 2004, of course, seems quite a long time ago now, and it's helpful to look at some of the more recent policy context and to see that the relevance of land cover map has, if anything, increased in the last 7 years. Recently, we've seen the Lawton report on making space for nature, which was very much concerned about looking at conservation areas within a landscape context, looking at their size and how well joined up they are. We've had the Climate Change Act and the requirement to produce climate change risk assessments. The UK National Ecosystem Assessment has just been published, as has the England Natural Environment White Paper, and I'll say a few words about both of those in a minute. We've also seen the Land Use Foresight Study, which looked at the drivers and implications of land use choices across the UK. We have policies to increase the openness and accessibility of data and to promote more locally based decision making. There are also moves to promote the greater engagement of citizens in citizen science. There is a huge investment taking place at the EU level to develop better and more useful satellite imagery through the GMES programme. And of course, there is a strong pressure in these straitened financial times to reduce our monitoring costs. I mentioned the National Ecosystem Assessment, which was published on the 2nd of June. This has generated a huge degree of engagement and interest in focusing on the state of our ecosystems and better describing the ecosystem services we derive from them. The first key message of that assessment encapsulates the issue which the assessment addressed in great detail. The natural world and its biodiversity, its constituent ecosystems, are critically important to our well-being and economic prosperity, but are consistently undervalued in conventional economic analyses and decision-making. The NEA is likely to promote a considerable amount of follow-on work with a focus very much on better characterization of the delivery and valuation of ecosystem services so that we can make better decisions about the decisions which actually impact our natural environment. The Land Cover Map 2007 could play a really useful part in that future analysis. The England Natural Environment White Paper, The Natural Choice, was published shortly after the NEA and was very much influenced by its conceptual framework and conclusions. I list here some of the key measures from the White Paper, and it's clear that the new land cover map could be a useful tool in several of these measures. We have the government response to the Making Space for Nature report, with proposals to establish nature improvement areas, which are very much about joining conservation up at a landscape scale. We have a pilot on biodiversity offsetting, where again, looking at habitats in their landscape context will be very useful. There's the opportunity for new local nature partnerships to potentially work with local enterprise partnerships. There's a proposal for new green area designations and better urban green spaces, where again the land cover map may be very useful. There's the proposal to establish a new My Environment web portal to help people to access environmental information. There's the establishment of a Natural Capital Committee to advise the Economic Affairs Committee, chaired by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, about the health and extent of the country's natural capital. An annual statement of the UK Green Accounts, and a task force to expand UK business opportunities within the natural environment. For each of these initiatives, it's relatively easy to see the value of a good land cover map. In conclusion, I think there are strong policy drivers for use of the land cover map. Some of those are long-established drivers and some new. Land Cover Map 2007 seems to be a significant improvement on the already useful earlier versions of the map. The proof of its usefulness, of course, will obviously need to come from experience in practice. So we'll only be able to see that after a few months or years of people using the data set. And a key aspect, I'm sure, will be the ease of access and the ability to integrate the LCM with other information. If the land cover map is as useful as I think it will be, we will need to find ways of cheaply and automatically repeating the survey to provide the important information on habitat and land cover change over time. I can't finish this short presentation without commenting on the fact, of course, that we're launching a 2007 map in 2011. To a large extent, this 4-year gap has been due to the significant technical and organisational difficulties which the land cover map team have faced in producing this innovative product. I'm really grateful to the team at the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology and associated teams elsewhere for the huge amount of work they've put into producing this map. And I really hope that in the future, the lessons that we've learned in producing the map and the geographical framework that has been generated for it will help us to generate future maps in a much more timely way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. That was a most interesting presentation. I'm sure there'll be questions later. Now I'd like to get to the meat of the matter. I'd like to welcome Dr. Dan Morton, who has led the development of the land cover map and is responsible for the innovative product that you're about to hear. It's very pleasing to me that CEH has been responsible for producing Land Cover Map 2007. Dan, proceed.
This presentation is about LCM 2007, a UK land cover map built by integrating satellite data with generalized digital cartography. In this talk I will cover why land cover information is important, how it is created and what it is used for. I will briefly describe the LCM 2007 products. A following presentation will describe how to obtain them. UK land is under pressure. If past trends continue, the current population of approximately 62 million is expected to increase to 72 million by the mid-30s. The growing population will need space to live, space to work, space for leisure, a transport infrastructure, raw materials, somewhere to dispose of waste, and land for growing crops and food. The demand for land has forced wildlife into marginal and fragmented habitats. Ecosystems and the services that they provide, such as clean water, and pollination of our crops, and the mechanisms that maintain biodiversity are under pressure too. It is imperative, therefore, that we know what lies on the surface of our land, what we have and where it is, so that we can manage the pressures and demand in order to maintain and improve the quality of life for future generations. For land cover mapping of very large areas, detailed ground-based surveys would not be cost-effective, so satellite images are used. The UK is a cloudy place, and for optical sensors clouds obscure the land. Therefore, in order to obtain a complete cloud-free coverage of the UK, a mosaic of satellite images was required. The target year for image capture was 2007. However, because of the cloud, it was necessary to use images from 2005 to 2008. It is not enough to compile a single season mosaic. Seasonal differences are essential to delineate different land cover types. For example, a field of winter wheat early on in the year is not dissimilar to grassland when viewed from 700 kilometers away in space. Whereas later in the year, when the crop is ready to harvest, the colours are distinct. In fact, composite images containing seasonal information are essential for accurate land cover mapping. For LCM 2007, in total we used 71 satellite scenes, and from these we created 34 summer-winter composite images. Satellite data was integrated with digital cartography to produce LCM 2007. Land cover was classified according to UK Biodiversity Action Plan Broad Habitats. The Biodiversity Action Plan was the UK government's response to the Earth Summit in Rio 1992. Digital cartography used in the production of LCM 2007 includes Ordnance Survey Master Map, OSNI Large-Scale Vector from the Northern Ireland Land and Property Services, formerly the Ordnance Survey of Northern Ireland, and agricultural land parcels provided by the Rural Payments Agency and devolved governments. In order to appreciate the significance of and the technical advances of LCM 2007, it is necessary to consider the previous two land cover maps produced by the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. The Land Cover Map of Great Britain 1990 is a pixel product. It was produced before the Earth Summit in Rio 1992, so 25 bespoke land cover classes were used. Land cover was assigned to each pixel according to its spectral characteristics. Pixel-based classifications are simple conceptually and straightforward computationally, but they often give poor quality results. Pixel classification is sensitive to sensor artifacts. It is sensitive to the spectral variability that occurs within a region of a single land cover type, and also to the mixed pixels that occur at the boundaries between land covers. Furthermore, the pixelated structure does not readily integrate with other sources of ground-based information. The Land Cover Map for 2000, or LCM 2000, was the second land cover map produced by the Centre for Ecology and Hydrology. The production of LCM 2000 used novel object-based image analysis techniques that had recently emerged from geographical information science. Instead of representing the land surface as regular-sized pixels, the land surface was modelled as a collection of discrete irregular objects such as roads, lakes, urban areas, fields, and so forth. Partitioning an image into objects is analogous to the way humans conceptually organize the landscape in order to understand it, and the contextual relationships between land cover objects assist with their classification. Land cover objects for LCM 2000 were derived from image segments. Image segmentation refers to the partitioning of a digital image into multiple segments. A label is assigned to every pixel in the image, such that pixels with the same label share certain visual characteristics. Clusters of pixels with the same label identify relatively homogeneous areas, image segments. LCM 2000 classified land cover according to Biodiversity Action Plan broad habitats. The average spectral response of the pixels within a land parcel was used to assign a land cover class, which may later have been refined with ancillary information. The object-based approach gives a more coherent land cover product, free of the irregularities due to sensor artifacts, small scale variation, and mixed response pixels that occur at the boundaries between different land cover types. Image segmentation results are sensitive to algorithm parameterization and image timing. A segmentation performed for a fixed area of land, but at different times, will not give the same results. Differences in illumination and vegetative stage will produce a different set of image objects. The consequence of this is that successive land cover products derived from image segmentation will have different spatial structures, which restrict spatial and temporal comparisons and therefore the ability to detect change. In the real world, land cover objects are generally separated by boundaries such as hedges, streams, rivers, roads, and these structures are relatively static through time. Digital cartography from national inventories can provide these real-world objects, and successive land cover maps based on these will have a common structure, making spatially explicit change detection a realistic ambition. The spatial inventories maintained by the UK national mapping agencies are highly detailed. The image shown here is an overlay of Ordnance Survey master map against a satellite image resampled to a 20 × 20 metre pixel resolution. 20 to 30 metres is the typical resolution of the optical data used to produce LCM 2007. Clearly, there is too much detail in the digital cartography relative to the information that can be extracted from the satellite image. LCM 2007 used a maximum likelihood object-based classification procedure, and in order to obtain a reliable result, an absolute minimum of 4 whole pixels is required per object. Therefore, constraints were imposed upon the spatial structure. No land parcel may be less than half a hectare in area, and no parcel may be narrower than 20 metres. National cartography is too detailed to fulfil these requirements. Spatial generalization is a process in which unnecessary detail is removed, but detail relevant to the problem domain is retained. In order to produce a spatial structure suitable for LCM 2007, the detailed digital cartography was generalized. This was a computationally intense process, requiring bespoke software running in a high-performance computing cluster. The generalization process works by classifying objects according to their geometric complexity. The image here shows detailed digital cartography classified in this manner. Green parcels are good. They are greater than the minimum mappable unit of 0.5 hectares, and they are wider than the minimum feature width of 20 metres, and they have simple boundaries. Yellow parcels are okay. They are greater than the minimum mappable units and wider than the minimum feature width, but they have complex boundaries and will be simplified if possible. Dark blue parcels are okay too, but they are narrow relative to their area, and if possible they will be simplified. Light blue parcels are bad. They are too small and they are too skinny. Red parcels are bad too. They are too small. Spatial generalization should therefore remove all light blue and red parcels as they violate the spatial framework requirements, and maximize the green parcels relative to the yellow and the blue. The generalization process contains iterative stages of splitting and merging, and after each step the framework moves closer to the ideal. The process terminates when further improvements to the spatial structure are not worthwhile compared to the cost of further processing. The number of objects from the digital cartography giving a full UK coverage was well in excess of 100 million. Spatial generalization reduces this level of detail significantly to around 6% of the original parcel density. So let's see how things are starting to stack up. We have summer-winter composite images and generalized digital cartography. The objective of the spatial framework is to create objects which enclose relatively homogeneous groups of pixels, since the maximum likelihood classifier will not perform well for land parcels containing multimodal distributions. Here it can be seen that the generalized digital cartography goes some way towards creating a suitable framework, but there are clearly areas of distinct land cover that are not delineated. This situation is not uncommon in extensive arable areas. The missing boundaries usually relate to different farming practices being applied to the same field, so no physical boundary exists for the mapping agencies to map. In order to receive agricultural subsidies, farmers must submit outlines of land used. These agricultural census data are maintained by government agencies and are a very useful source of additional information. They are combined with the generalized cartography to refine the spatial framework. In this example, it is clear that they account for much of the land cover variability not captured by the generalized cartography alone. But look carefully though. There are still enclosed areas with mixed pixel distributions. In a final attempt to mop up the remaining variability, an image segmentation is performed, and this is integrated to give the completed spatial framework. So we now have satellite imagery, and we have a complete coverage of land parcels derived from cartography and image segmentation. We also have a nomenclature based on Biodiversity Action Plan broad habitats with which to name land parcels. A series of field trips was also undertaken to collect ground reference points for training the classifier and validating the classifications. The points were collected using a GPS-enabled tablet PC with a bespoke recording package. Land cover points were identified from a vehicle as it travelled along the road network. Some points were also taken on foot where vehicular access was not possible. The ground reference points were distributed widely across the UK, and routes were carefully selected to visit the rarer land cover types. With the gathered information, we are now ready to begin the classification process. The process starts by buffering in from the boundary of each land parcel. This removes the mixed pixels that occur at the boundaries between different land cover types from the average spectral response and gives a cleaner signal. The average spectral response is presented to the trained classifier, which then returns the most likely land cover class. This information is used to label the parcels as broad habitats. Often it is not possible to determine broad habitats from satellite data. For example, non-vegetated surfaces such as roads, sandy beaches, car parks, urban areas, open quarries, and bare rock have similar reflectance and can easily be misclassified as one or the other. When spectral confusion like this occurs, it is necessary to make use of contextual and ancillary information to refine the classification. For example, if we find a land parcel that is labelled as littoral sediment or sand, and it occurs 50 miles inland and within the urban boundary, it's probably wrong. More likely it's an urban land cover type, and we apply a knowledge-based rule to refine it. Grassland gives us another example. Using satellites we can detect grassland quite well, and can differentiate unproductive grassland or rough grassland from grassland that has been managed and improved. Most semi-natural grasslands are relatively unproductive and are characterized by their species compositions, and this level of detail cannot be gathered from space. To separate rough grassland into semi-natural grasslands such as acid grassland, calcareous grassland, neutral grassland and bog, we need to take account of the underlying soil type, altitude and slope. For example, unproductive grassland at 300 meters altitude on an acid soil is quite likely to be acid grassland. This slide demonstrates the effect of applying knowledge-based enhancements on Dartmoor. From the satellite data we are able to determine that much of the land was covered with unproductive rough grassland, the slightly off yellow colour on the left-hand picture. After the knowledge-based enhancements, most of the rough grassland has been reassigned. The pallid green colour on the steeper slopes represents acid grassland. The much darker green colour on the top of the moor represents bog. There are some areas of rough grassland that remain, and these remain because the knowledge base was insufficient for us to confidently reassign these land covers. The application of knowledge-based enhancements is the final stage in land cover classification, and enhancements were applied to approximately 20% of land parcels. Now that the description of the production process is complete, let's take a look at a couple of examples in different landscape contexts. This first slide shows an area in North Wales. Towards the northwest, the low-lying area near Lake Bala is dominated by improved grassland. This gradually gives way to rough, then acid grassland, and eventually to heather and bog as you ascend towards the east. The extensive areas of Coniferous Woodlands shown by the Ordnance Survey map are also very accurately mapped by LCM 2007. This example gives a much busier landscape in suburban western London. Richmond Park, Osterley Park and Kew Botanical Gardens are clearly visible in LCM 2007. So too is Heathrow Airport in the southwest. The Centre for Ecology and Hydrology's land cover maps have many uses. For example, the management of natural resources, urban planning, carbon accounting, flood risk modelling and so forth. In fact, a recent literature search identified nearly 300 publications that have referred to LCM 2000 and around 100 that have referred to LCM GB 1990. These products have clearly had a huge scientific and societal impact. LCM 2007 will continue and enhance this trend. The real strength of land cover products becomes apparent when layered with other sources of spatial data. For example, the spatial distribution of habitats in this lakeland landscape becomes instantly more understandable when combined with terrain. And in fact, by layering and integrating spatial data in a planned and structured manner, we can move forward from the idea of static land cover maps and start thinking of land cover information systems capable of supporting a wide range of scientific, environmental and policy relevant questions. Let's wrap up then. LCM 2007 forms a base layer for a wide range of applications. LCM 2007 has made the link to real-world objects that delineate land use. This has enabled us to produce a land cover product with greater spatial and thematic accuracy than would have otherwise been possible. The generalized cartography component of the framework is a big step forward. Real landscape boundaries are relatively static through time. This will enable the framework to be reused for future land cover maps, or possibly for a rolling program of updates. Fixing the spatial structure will facilitate accurate change detection. The fixed framework also gives us a structure for organizing layers of information about the land surface and can support the production of a dynamic land information system. There is a range of products associated with LCM 2007. The LCM 2007 vector is the flagship product and is maintained as two complete coverages, one of Northern Ireland and one of Great Britain. Associated with each parcel is a set of attributes. These attributes give information about land cover and its derivation. More detail is available from the product documentation. A range of raster products exists. The 25-meter product gives the most likely land cover class. 1 kilometer dominant cover products summarize the dominant cover at 2 thematic resolutions. Further raster products give percentage cover for each habitat at 2 thematic resolutions. A short presentation will follow describing how to obtain these products from the CEH Information Gateway.
Well, thank you, Dan, for a most illuminating presentation. It's amazing how much information and knowledge you can get into a short presentation. Now I'd like to introduce Pete Vodden, who will give you a short overview of how you can access Land Cover Map. But I'd like to stress that Land Cover Map is just a part of the considerable amount of environmental information that can be gathered from the Centre of Ecology and Hydrology through the Centre's Information Gateway. Details can be provided on request. Peter, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to briefly cover how to get at Land Cover Map data by the CEH Gateway facility. The CEH Information Gateway is part of a federation of data catalogues designed to common standards used by data providers across the UK and Europe. Because of these common standards, a number of different web catalogues can be used to find CEH data in general and land cover data in particular. Naturally, we'd like people to use our portal, not just because we made it, but because at the moment it offers more capability than many of the other providers out there. The Information Gateway provides discovery, view and access services. Discovery is about finding the data that you need. The default method for finding data is to use the built-in search engine. As usual with a search engine, enclosing the search terms in quotes is a good tip if you know exactly what you're looking for, but the search engine will help you anyway. Now, please don't remember this web address. I only put it there to make the point that you may have discovered a link to the catalogue record via some other route, for example, a hyperlink in a document or on another website. Either way, you'll arrive at a search result similar to this one. It tells you about the particular data resource. A brief summary is always presented, but you can click for more information. Typically, you might want to visualize the data on a map. This is the next function of the gateway that we'll consider, map viewing. When the map view icon is present in the search results, then simply clicking on the icon will bring up a map-based view of the dataset. The view service will work in any compatible software, but the gateway provides its own simple viewer for convenience. You can zoom, pan and add more maps in overlay mode. These maps may be from other CEH services or indeed from other providers. Having visualized the data, you may be interested in accessing it. The third function of the gateway is to connect users with the data that they need. When the download icon is present in the search results, then a file download is available for that dataset. Clicking on this icon launches a web application that provides a fully automated online ordering system. We call it the Downloads Manager. The system automatically causes the data requested to be extracted. The user is required to accept terms and conditions, and a file is automatically prepared. Note that you do need a gateway account to use this facility, but registration is a very simple process. It's possible for the user to select a subset of the data, and that happens again automatically on the fly. Many of CEH's data resources are available via click-through, but some resources have more complicated licensing arrangements. This is also dealt with automatically. Most maps are freely available. When it comes to licensing of view services, though, we cannot predict or control what software the user will be using to access the service. So licensing of view services is a bit more complicated, but not by much. So how does that work? Well, basically, the catalogue entry warns the user that this view service requires a license. The information link points to the help pages that guide you through the process. In essence, it's quite similar to the click-through licensing that we've already seen for the download manager. The difference being that in this case, instead of pre-preparing a file, the end result of the negotiation is a personal web address or a proxy URL that you can use to access the live mapping service using whatever software you wish. There are a number of different protection methods available to suit licensees who use a variety of different software tools, but I'll demonstrate one of the more popular methods. In this scenario, the end result of the license negotiation is a proxy URL or web address. Any compatible software can be used to view the map. The user simply enters the proxy address into the application. I demonstrate that here using the excellent open source tool called QuantumGIS that's freely available. They're then challenged to provide the username and password that they used to negotiate the license in the first place. They enter that information, and if the credentials match up, then they're allowed to view the map service. If this online licensing stuff seems complicated, please don't worry. A simple call to the help desk will suffice, and an administrator can set up the license to access on your behalf and explain its operation to you. So that's it. And here comes the advert. Of course, the CH Gateway is about a lot more than land cover. We cover information ranging from ECN, BRC, the River Flow Archive, and many long-term studies. So please, visit gateway.ceh.ac.uk and see what CH offers through its Gateway facility. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Peter. I hope all people on the webinar found that useful to understand how you're able to access the land cover map and related data. Well, now I think it's time for some questions and answers. But before I do, I'd like to thank all the contributors to this session today, and particularly those people involved in the organisation and overcoming many of the running technical details. So now to Q&A. So perhaps the first one I'd like to address, and I'd like Ian to answer this. Ian, how much does Land Cover Map 2007 cost? I think it would be useful to deal with this straight away.
Yeah, certainly, Mark. Ian Simpson here at CH Lancaster. All of the 1 kilometre products are free of charge and downloadable from the CH Information Gateway, and the 25 metre and vector products can be accessed by completing an online application form, which is accessible via the CH pages. For the 25 metre product and the vector product, they are free of charge for academic use, but then there is a suite of charges for other users. And all details of that are again on the CH web pages.
Thank you very much indeed. So do you need a license to use Land Cover Map 2007? And what about the relevance to commercial users? Ian?
Yes, you do need a license to use the Land Cover Map. The 1 kilometre products, there is a click-through license through the gateway. For the 25 metre product and the vector product, licenses are negotiated with the data licensing team, and the start of that process is either an email to datalicensing@ch.ac.uk or completion of the online application form on the CH web pages. And it's available for negotiation for commercial use on a case-by-case basis.
Well, okay. Maybe a couple more to you, then, Ian, I think, seeing those coming in. Well, can you explain a little more, perhaps, about the validation process? And also, could you tell the listeners how quickly they can obtain a copy of Land Cover Map 2007 once their licenses have been agreed? Ian?
I'll take the second part of that question, Mark, about the time to get access to it. Once a signed license has been agreed, I mean, the 1 kilometre products can be obtained very, very quickly. The other products, once a signed license has been received by CH, we will endeavour to make sure those are distributed within 7 days. I'll hand over to Dan for the validation question.
Yes, hello. Well, there were two parts to the validation. You will have seen in one of the slides that we conducted an extensive field campaign, and we withheld some of those points for validating the classification results. And in doing that, we got a figure which I think was 85% correspondence with the validation points with the broad habitats. There was another validation that we did where we compared LCM 2007 with the field survey of 2007 and did a correspondence there. The overall figure that we had, I think, was around, was it 65%, Claire? 65% correspondence with the field survey. But bear in mind that the field survey is about 81% repeatable, so you could argue that the sort of accuracy figure that you might get from that is 65 over 81. But it's actually quite a complex analysis, the validation, and if anybody wants to know more about it, I would really recommend that they went to look at the final reports.
Thanks, Dan. Looking at some other questions coming in, maybe again for Ian, this one, Ian, really revolving around questions whether government agencies get access to the data for free or at a cost.
That's actually quite a complicated question to answer because of the different, depending on what licenses they already have. I think it might probably better if I refer people to the guidance on the website rather than take that. There is guidance on the website for that, but it will really depend on who they are, what existing arrangements are in place with organisations like Ordnance Survey, because there are royalties to pay to Ordnance Survey, and otherwise they will have to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis if they come into the data licensing team.
Okay, there are quite a few questions coming in from local authorities or for charity use, etc. May I suggest that people take Ian's advice and visit the web to be able to answer some of those detailed questions. Maybe we can go back to the top and direct one at Dan, please, with respect to the value of land cover map and whether you can or are able to go back to 1990 and 2000 so you can generate compatible land cover maps of these time slices so you can actually record and investigate change. Dan, please, if possible.
Yes, it's a good question, and yeah, I mean, the thing about the previous land cover maps is the difference in spatial structure, and that's something that's really made change detection quite difficult. When you're comparing products with disparate spatial structures, you have to be sure that any changes that you detect are not due to methodological differences or error in the different products. But the step forward, really, of LCM 2007 is that the spatial framework is based on a sort of real-world objects that delineates different land use, and land use has a very close correlation with land cover. And what we can do, I mean, certainly all future maps based upon this structure would be readily comparable to LCM 2007, but it should also be possible to backcast the 1990 products and the LCM 2000 products into the same spatial structure and then start really looking for spatially explicit changes in land cover. In fact, it might even be possible to go further back than that, because the Dudley Stamp map series of the 1930s has also recently been digitised and classified into land cover types by Natural England, and it is feasible that we could produce land cover change from 1930 to 1990, and the 1930s was pre the agricultural revolution that occurred after the war. So yeah, the new framework creates good possibilities for looking at change in different land cover products.
Thank you very much, Dan. And perhaps an interesting one that's just come in it's a simple question. Is it possible for a member of the public, a farmer, for example, or a landowner, to provide information on misclassified land parcels? And will you be able to do anything with such information? Dan, maybe.
sort of in detail on this?
Well, my first reaction to that one is how you would validate the quality of the information that was coming in. I'm not quite sure how you would do that, because you need some kind of independent validation of what it was that you were receiving. Do you want to add to that, Dan?
Can we repeat the question again, please?
A simple question, Dan, whether if individuals looking at the way we've characterised the land parcel or classification and they were incorrect, whether a change could be made. And I think Ian has said that it's difficult to do that.
I mean, the product as it is a best estimate of what's on the ground in 2007. I mean, we're now 4 years on from 2007, so it wouldn't be wise to start relabeling land parcels with information that's come from 2011. I mean, a useful component of the product is that it doesn't give just the most likely land cover class, but it also gives the 4 most likely alternatives, and it's quite possible that one of the alternative classes could be the true land cover of that site.
Thanks, Dan. I think that's clear enough. Another question, interesting one here. Do you have any comment on how well it handles coastal or intertidal areas?
I believe we've handled coastal and intertidal areas very well. We haven't done a detailed analysis of those areas, but from sort of inspecting the map and looking at it and cross-relating it with other information of those areas, the coastal and intertidal areas are as good as we could expect.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. I don't know who best to ask to answer this one, but maybe Claire or maybe Dan. But do we have plans for linking land cover map, for example, to the National Biodiversity Network Gateway? Maybe Pete or Ian could actually consider that question. Or would you like me to?
I think there are plans afoot to do that, Mark, but I'm afraid I don't know the details of it.
Okay, well maybe maybe I can answer it simply. Yes, of course. I think it's a land cover map, 2007 or earlier maps, I think provides an extremely valuable platform on which to build a number of layers, not least of which will be the biodiversity information collected through the NBN gateway, or that from the BRC, or in fact any related information that CH holds in the information gateway. This mapping process is critical, I think, as questions have alluded to already in the webinar about how we monitor change, how we correlate short-term and long-term variation in ecosystem services and biodiversity measures. So the simple answer is yes. Another one that's come up, and I don't know who would like to answer this one. Peter, perhaps? Peter Costigan or Ian. Are there plans for a land cover map update, and when would that happen? And a related question is, do we plan to undertake another countryside survey?
Do you want me to kick off with that one, Mark? Although obviously
that would be really helpful, Peter. Yes, I can perhaps add to it when I
Peter Costigan from DEFRA in London. Firstly, the last countryside survey was jointly funded by NERC, which provided about 45% of the funding, DEFRA something over 30%, and the devolved administrations and countryside agencies provided the balance of the funding. There hasn't been a decision made yet on what should happen about a subsequent countryside survey. Clearly we've had quite a few countryside surveys up to now, so there is a certain logic in continuing that series. But I think what people would like to do, and there's a number of initiatives going on in this regard, is to think about whether the actual model of countryside survey is an ideal model going forward. We need to recognise the fact that there are considerable sort of technical improvements these days. We already saw improvements in the way that the last countryside survey was recorded in the field using computers. We've seen this improvement to the land cover map. We're also keen to see whether it's possible to involve citizens more widely in potential recording within what might happen for countryside survey in the future. That might help to address one of the challenges that we face with countryside survey, which is because it's then repeated every 9 or 10 years or so, it actually is difficult to be able to relate the changes as they're measured in the countryside to policy changes and changes in practice of land management. And so we need to think, the various partners who are involved in funding countryside survey, and I think more widely, need to think about what would be the most appropriate way of monitoring change in the countryside in the future. Clearly doing a repeat analysis of the land cover map for future years may be a very useful contribution to that. I think, as I said in my presentation, it will be really interesting to see how different users actually use land cover map 2007, and to some extent decisions about what should come in the future will be informed by the use people actually make of land cover map 2007.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. That was a comprehensive response, and I think to add to that, we certainly do have plans to mature and develop a product such as land cover map to try and generate a mapping system which is more, I think, appropriate to near and real time. But those require a number of technical developments and the integration of the remote sensing and Earth observation information, so that we are able to better map linear features. We can get more accuracy on variation, incorporating, as Peter has said, a whole range of monitoring and recording schemes, so we can develop a more appropriate system for monitoring change in the environment. And we are running out of time, I'm afraid, at the moment. And I just wondered if there are any general points that the panel would like to raise before we wrap up. There are a number of quite detailed technical questions coming in, which I suggest that people direct at CH through the website that's already on the screen in front of you. So I would, before I close the meeting, are there any other comments that Peter or Ian or Dan or Claire or others would like to make?
Yes, it's Dan here. I mean, I see that there's a lot of questions on the screen there, and we obviously don't have a chance to answer them all in this webinar, but these questions will be recorded, and what we'll do is we will try and pick out the common themes, and we'll send answers to all the people that they apply to.
Thank you, Dan. And also the presentations will be available, and again, the address for accessing those will be provided. So I do encourage all of us who've been involved in this experience of the webinar. It's certainly the first I've been involved in, and I've found it extremely valuable and worthwhile. So I do encourage people to interact with ourselves at CH and who produce a land cover map to address many of those questions raised in Peter's response to the question of how we take it forward. I believe as a community we should work together on this, and I do believe that this will help us really understand more about our changing world and changing environment. So to finish, I really would like to thank everybody, and I look forward to working with all of you in the future. Thank you very much indeed.